It's hard to imagine historical figures like George Washington or Napoleon Bonaparte. Nice plane. We are at an Air Force base, though, so stand by. All right. It's hard to imagine historical figures like George Washington or Napoleon Bonaparte outside of the horrors of war and in the throes of love. But they were both very much in love with their mates and put it in writing. Unfortunately, after the death of her husband in 1799, First Lady Martha Washington destroyed all of the correspondence between she and George. 3 letters from her husband were found after her death on May 22nd, 1802, beneath a desk drawer. Here is one of the letters, dated June 23rd, 1775, from Philadelphia during the Revolutionary War. My dearest, as I am within a few minutes of leaving this city, I could not think of departing from it without dropping you a line, especially as I do not know whether it may be in my power to write again till I get to the camp at Boston. I go fully trusting in that providence, which has been more bountiful to me than I deserve, and in full confidence of a happy meeting with you sometime in the fall. I have not time to add more, as I am surrounded with company to take leave of me. I retain an unalterable affection for you, which neither time nor distance can change. My best love to Jack and Nellie, in regard for the rest of the family, concludes with the utmost truth and sincerity. Your entire George Washington.
Sullivan Ballou was a successful 32-year-old attorney in Providence, Rhode Island, when Abraham Lincoln called for volunteers in the wake of Fort Sumter. He enlisted in the 2nd Rhode Island Infantry, where he was elected major. By mid-July, the swirling events the summer of 1861 had brought Ballou and his unit to a training camp in the nation's capital, where he penned this letter to his wife. Washington, D.C., July 14, 1861. Dear Sarah, indications are very strong that we shall move in a few days, perhaps tomorrow. Lest I should not be able to write you again, I feel impelled to write a few lines that may fall under your eye when I shall be no more. If it is necessary that I should fall on the battlefield for my country, I am ready. I have no misgivings about or lack of confidence in the cause in which I am engaged, and my courage does not halt or falter. I know how strongly American civilization now leans upon the triumph of government, and how great a debt we owe to those who went before us through the blood and suffering of the Revolution, and I am willing, perfectly willing, to lay down all my joys in this life to help maintain this government and to pay that debt. But, my dear wife, when I know that with my own joys I lay down nearly all of yours and replace them in this life with care and sorrows, Sarah, my love for you is deathless. It seems to bind me with mighty cables that nothing but omnipotence can break, and yet my love of country comes o'er me like a strong wind and bears thee irresistibly on with those chains to the battlefield. The memories of all the blissful moments I have spent with you come crowding over me, and I feel most deeply grateful to God and you that I've enjoyed them so long, and how hard it is for me to give them up and burn to ashes the hopes of future years when, God willing, we might still have lived and loved together and seen our boys grow up to honorable manhood around us. If I do not return, my dear Sarah, never forget how much I love you, nor that when my last breath escapes me on the battlefield, it will whisper your name. Forgive my many faults and the many pains I have caused you. How thoughtless, how foolish I have oftentimes been. But, oh, Sarah, if the dead can come back to this earth and flit unseen around those they loved, I shall always be near you in the day and in the night, amidst your happiest scenes and gloomiest hours, always, always, and when the soft breeze fans your cheek, it shall be my breath, and on the cool air cools your throbbing temples, it shall be my spirit passing by. Sarah, do not mourn me dead. Think I am gone, and wait for me, for we shall meet again. Sullivan. Sullivan Ballou was killed a week later in Virginia at the First Battle of Bull Run, also known as the Battle of First Manassas. It was the first major battle of the American Civil War.
Night before last, I believe I saved a man for good, who would not have survived the night. But oh, what I need is a great, strong, intelligent man, always devoted, always right there to follow instruction. He should be 6 feet, never tired, never out of humor, tender as a woman, and muscled like Ajax. What a lot we could do. I have tried to hint my gratitude for the generous gifts coming to this poverty-stricken hospital. The goods will be of no idle superfluity, I can tell you. Up to now, we have been allowed almost nothing to work with. And now a general order has gone forth from the Army headquarters to economize on that. When I tell you that I have 1 large needle for my whole pavilion, and that I am obliged to give an average of 15 injections a day with it, and as if that were not enough, the doctor frequently asks to borrow for another hospital. You may guess how it all goes, but when the doctor brings it back, he knows I hate to lend it. He always says with the most winning smile, I am bringing back the baby to his mother. No child ever awaited Santa Claus with half the impatience that seizes me every time I think of the arrival of Rochambeau and his comrades shut up in their Antarctic hole for the winter, wondering how long supplies will hold out and when the ship will come. Really, it is a poverty beyond description. Only the strange part is that you would never suspect any sort of it should you enter the gates of our little hospital on a sunny morning when the flags are flying and fir trees carefully planted as if it were a terrace at the Versailles throw their pointed shadows across the frosted paths, carefree as you please. Ah, it is what makes the charm of the boulevards and the tragedy of the Parisian garrets. The father of one of my wounded, a rich merchant of Havre, has given me 2 thermometers, one that descends automatically, and I love it. But oh, the lax, perhaps the hardest to bear, now that I have provided myself with instruments and the Rochambeau has sailed, are the alimentary and medicinal ones. One man I'm keeping alive on malted milk ordered from Paris and fresh eggs, the hospital milk being utterly undrinkable and the eggs preserved. The head surgeon regards my little efforts as a symptom of benign lunacy, but he lets me do as I please. Alas, sentiment, intuition, endeavor don't take the place of science. When I realize my actual ignorance, it would utterly terrify me if I did not know I am meant to be just here, and am learning every day from experience, if not from books and masters. You can't imagine, I suppose, that we laugh and jest all day? Yet, it is so, and if you can't do that, you might as well get out, for all the good you will ever do for a French wounded soldier. Why, I believe his very wounds wouldn't heal if he were not allowed to make merry over them, and he will jest with you up to the hour before he dies, a mixture of wit and pathos too poignant to ever reproduce. Number 9, a contusion of cerebral trepidation, just waked up. He sees me writing, Mademoiselle, will you give me my greetings to your family? And number 4, echoed by number 4, and mine also, Mademoiselle. Poor fellow, he can hardly be here long. My little boy from Havre, 19 years old, with resection of the shoulder at temperature that refuses to moderate, which disquiets me, for there is no obvious reason for save a high-strung temperament. Speaks English very well. One day he was looking at my insignia, ADF, and a bar. "What's your rank, mademoiselle?" I told him. "Then I think they should call you lieutenant of the lifeguards." Pretty, wasn't it? I suppose you should know that war surgery calls for antiseptics much more powerful than those used in ordinary peace operations. For instance, alcohol, 95%. It is no joke to pour alcohol into a gaping wound. And I, though brave as can be, resents it intensely. One day, as he gripped the sides of the operating table to keep from upsetting my arrangements, he gave me a quizzical look. "Sister, why are you tempting me so when you know very well that the government has strictly forbidden our taking any sort of alcohol?" I wish you could see my ward just now, with the wintry sunlight streaming in, making us all think we are warmer. Imagine, it is not yet December, and the mercury is down nearly to 0 Fahrenheit. It takes some nerve to dress in white linen with sleeve above the elbow. But we don't mind when the sun shines, making bright gold patches everywhere and striking through the trophy of flags that I have arranged down there at the end of the ward, to the great delight of the children. There hangs the flag of the Allies, except Japan, to which wasn't to be had, and there is a wee stars and stripes at the point of the shield, made by our obliging carpenter. The electric lights overhead are draped in tricolor, and on the table is one red rose brought from Paris. It is not so bad from the front hospital and wonder of wonders. It's clean, and that by dint of much strategy. It used to be awful, but there are two ways of appealing to a Frenchman, through his heart and through his pride. When you work both together, you have body and soul. And so when my orderlies saw me on my knees scrubbing, they came to the rescue. And then I clinched the matter with the flags and the suggestion that ours should be the model ward. It worked. But of course, one did not discount tomorrow.
In July of 1965, Bud's mother, Clara, was looking through the box of his personal effects, among which was a scrap of paper, or so she thought. Yellow with age, she was about to dispose of it, but on second thought, she opened it. To her surprise, she found a typewritten letter folded into size 2 and 1/2 by 4 inches, which was the size of Bud's military prayer book, and also one of his personal effects. Why had the letter not been found earlier? Conclusion: owing to the fact that the prayer book was badly bloodstained, which had caused the pages to stick together, Clara never opened it. This is understandable, since the blood was that of her blood, and it would have been very painful for her to try and page through it. It is quite a coincidence that Bud's father, John, had never read the letter, but his last gesture as he was dying on December 16, 1950, was to raise his hands heavenward, lift his arms upward, and with a radiant smile say, "Bud, I'm coming." Why a coincidence? Bud had written, "Now I do my part for you and await your coming to me." Prophetic, no doubt about it. Along with the story of how the letter was discovered 21 years after Bud Ray's death, it was the original text not published in the 50 Greatest Letters from America's Wars and the Mammoth Book of War Letters and Diaries, publications regardless Sergeant Ray's raw words, conveying his fear, devotion to his family, and his faith, stand the test of time. Dear Mom and Dad, strange thing about this letter. If I'm alive a month from now, you will not receive it. For its coming to you will mean that after my 26th birthday, God has decided I've been on earth long enough, and he wants me to come up and take the examination for permanent service with him. It's hard to write a letter like this. There are 1,000,001 things I want to say. There's so many I ought to say, if this is the last letter I ever write to you. I'm telling you that I love you two so very much. Not one better than the other, but absolutely equally. Some things a man can never thank his parents enough for. They come to be taken for granted. Care when you are a child, and countless favors as he grows up. I am recalling now all your prayers, your watchfulness, all the sacrifices that were made for me when sacrifice was a real thing, and not just a word to be used in speeches. I know how you had to do things to put me through school. I didn't realize these things, but I did. For any and all grief I caused you in this 26 years, I most heartily am sorry. I know that I can never make up for those little hurts and real wounds, but maybe if God permits me to be with him above, I can help out there. It's a funny thing about this mission, but I don't think I'll come back alive. Call it an Irishman's hunch or presentiment or whatever you will. I believe it is our Lord and his blessed mother giving me a tip to be prepared. In the event that I am killed, you can have the consolation of knowing that it was in the line of duty to my country. I am saddened because I shall not be with you in your life's later years. But until we meet, I want you to know that I die as I tried to live, the way you taught me. Life has turned out different from the way we planned it, and at 26 I die with many things to live for. But the loss of a few remaining years unlived together is as nothing compared to the eternity which we go. And it will be well worthwhile if I give my life to help cure a sickened world. And if you and I can help spare our mothers and fathers and younger generations from the griefs of war. As I prepare for this last mission, I am a bit homesick. I've been at other times when I thought of you, when I was lost a friend, when I wondered when and how this war would end. But the whole world is homesick. I have never written like this before, even though I've been through the valley of the shadows many times. But this night, Mother and Dad, you are so very close to me, and I long so to talk to you. I think of you and of home. America has asked much of our generation, but I'm glad to give her all I have because she has given me so much. I could write pages and never get said what I want to. But whatever happens, we shall never be split up. For through our prayers, we shall always be together. So, Mother and Dad, bravely change my star from blue to gold. And I hope my brother's star will keep shining blue until the day of peace. Pray for me, be proud of me, for I am proud of you. As you have done through the years for me, so now I do my part for you, and await your coming to me. The soldier and I shall be standing by your side to support and comfort you when the message comes. We regret to inform you. The mother of the soldier will also be there to sustain and comfort you, for she is the mother of all soldiers. Good night, dear Mother and Dad. God love you. Your loving son, Bud Arnold.
Letters from John W. Harper to his father. John W. Harper writes, "Letters I wrote to my family from Korea. were published by Life magazine in 1951 and by Life Books in 1958. One of the letters from Life is included in a book I wrote entitled Tent Pegs and Second Lieutenants. I commanded a rifle platoon with the 1st Marine Division in 1951 in Korea. The book is composed of memoirs and short stories drawn from the September and October fighting of 1951. My point of view in the memoir chapters is from ground level, a small unit leader of Marines facing units of the North Korean People's Army. They describe my experiences in infantry combat, including an assault on a North Korean redoubt. Monday, April 24, 1951. Dear Dad, this is one of those man-to-man letters, so stand by. I've got to talk to someone, and it does no good to talk to fellow Marines because even though they're as scared as I, they'd never admit it. They're real Marines, great guys and great fighters. I'm writing you personally because I don't want the women to know what the situation is and cause them to worry. Well, this is it. The expected Chinese offensive has started. Yesterday we pulled out where we were and moved into secondary positions behind the lines of the 7th Marines because we got a tip that the Chinese would hit last night. The ROK, South Korean troops, were on the 7th Marines' flanks. The Chinese did hit and hit hard, and the ROKs took off, leaving the 7th Reg's flanks open, and the Chinese hit the 7th from 3 sides, causing heavy casualties. So we moved up on this high ground we're now on, and the 7th Marines withdrew this afternoon, and we're now the furthest point forward on the front lines. We expect the Chinese to hit us tonight and are preparing for them. From where I am, I can watch the Marine Corsair planes bomb and strafe the hell out of them on the next mountain. To tell you the truth, I'm really scared. It's my first time under fire. I don't know what to say. It's hard to realize what's happening. Since I got a letter from my wife Saturday telling me we're expecting, I've done a lot of praying and thinking. I was so happy I laid down and cried like a baby. We've prayed it would happen for 4 months now, and I've almost given up hope. At least if I shouldn't return, part of my own flesh and blood is still alive. Now, especially since we're expecting, I want you to kind of keep her from worrying and don't mention the war around her. Kind of smooth things over. It's hard to write letters to anybody because the only thing there is to write about is what goes on here. And I can't write about that. This life is really miserable, but I guess it never really killed anybody. You just can't realize how terrible war is until you see it. And then it's hard to believe. This war is different than any ever fought by Americans. Korea is all mountains, and the Army doesn't know what the scoop is. They're getting better lately, though. If it weren't for the Marines, I don't know who the Army would get to take their tough spots for. Captured North Korean colonel called us the yellow legs because of our leggings. He said the Marines don't eat or sleep, they just fight. They'd rather die than give up their positions. Which is about right. For the first time since I've been in the Corps, I'm really proud to be a Marine. I got a better chance of living. The Marines don't leave dead or wounded behind like the Army has done many times in the past. Thank God for the Marines. They're a bunch of good men. Just back from down off the bottom of the mountain where I picked up some more ammo for our machine gun. If the Koreans hit us tonight, we're ready for them. Better not let the women see this letter. No sense making them worry. You being a man, I thought you'd understand how I feel. I'm wondering how you've been and wondering what you've been doing, so get the lead out of your pants and write me. How about a hunting date for next fall? if I'm home by then, which I doubt. It sure made me feel better writing you. Tell the women this is just one of those man-to-man letters. I'll write my wife after this thing's over. The sun's about to go down. It'll probably be a long and sleepless night. The Koreans only hit at night, and then they come in groves. Give my love to everyone. I know you'll take good care of my wife. Thanks, Dad, and God bless you. Love, from son Bob. Give Mom a big kiss for me. Tuesday, the 24th, next day. Dad, both our flanks got hit last night and a few casualties were inflicted. We're now withdrawing back a few more miles. Our company's got the great job of rear guard. There are Koreans all over the area below us. And since we're the last to leave, they'll be hot on our tails. God, what a nightmare. All because of those dirty cowards. They do it every time. Don't know if I'll mail this or not, but I've got to do something now besides smoke one cigarette after the other. All I can do now is hope and pray that I get out of this mess alive. I don't know why we're withdrawing. I guess the leaders know what they're doing. We're the furthest forward point, and the Koreans are on both flanks. I guess they don't want another trap like up north last winter. 1 hour later. We're still waiting for the word. Down below to our rear, the whole battalion is moving slowly back. A helicopter just came in and flew out some wounded. I wish we'd hurry and get the hell out of here. We'll be like fish in a rain barrel moving out with the Koreans on both sides. All we've got is one platoon for flank security, and they'll be lucky if we don't get slaughtered. Can't get cools over here, so I've become attached to camels. I'm sure going through the packs now, one after another. I can't help it. The boys up here want to stay and fight it out, but that would be suicide. The hell with this glory stuff. Our first gunner is due to go home in the next week or so, but he doesn't seem a bit worried. The second gunner's got the GIs and feels miserable. Our section leader, who's been overseas for 29 months, 7 of those months in Korea, doesn't expect to go home for quite a while. He was in that trap up north and is half shell-shocked. He's a heck of a good man. Up for the Bronze Star and the Purple Heart. Tanks are going to help us guard the rear. I like those big iron cans. God bless them. Still waiting. Our battalion has already pulled out, and I guess we'll wait until the 1st Battalion pulls out. This morning at sunup, they told us to stand by to move out in an hour. The sun keeps going slowly across the sky, and we're still here. Just finished a can of cold chicken and vegetables for lunch. We're going back to the very same place we were a week ago when our skipper got hit. He's probably back in Japan now, lucky guy. What a crazy letter this must be. Like a diary. I doubt if I'll ever send it. It's just something to keep my mind occupied. The other guys are keeping a lookout and squeeze off a few rounds every now and then. I'll wait until I can see the rats before I go wasting any ammo. Our company's just about all moved out, so I suppose we'll be moving along before long.
In September 1968, Captain Rodney R. Chastant from Mobile, Alabama, extended his 13-month tour of duty in Vietnam with Marine Air Group 13, 1st Marine Air Wing, Da Nang. He was killed 22 October. He was 25 years old. David is his brother. 19 October 67. Mom and Dad, your oldest son is now a captain in the United States Marine Corps. I was promoted yesterday. Of all the men selected for captain, 1,640 men, only about 50 men have been promoted to date. I was one of the 50, to my surprise and pleasure. My effective date of rank is 1 July 1967, which means I have technically been a captain for 3.5 months. With this promotion, my annual income is $9,000 a year. I'm single, 24 years old, college education, a captain in the Marine Corps. This is not a bad start in life, is it? As I understand, Dad, you were married about this point in your life. There was a war going on then, too. I really know very little about those years. Sometime you'll have to tell me about them. Mom, I appreciate all your letters. I appreciate your concern that some of the things you write about are trivial, but they aren't trivial to me. I'm eager to read anything about what you are doing or the family is doing. You can't understand the importance these trivial events take on out here. It helps me keep civilized. For a while, as I read your letter, I'm a normal person. I'm not killing people or worried about being killed. While I read your letters, I'm not carrying guns or grenades. Instead, I'm going ice skating with David, or walking through a department store to exchange a lampshade. It is great to know your family's safe, living in a secure country, a country made secure by thousands upon thousands of men who have died for that country. No, Mom, these things aren't trivial to me. They are vitally important to me. Those are the truly important things, not what I'm doing. I hope you will continue to write about those trivial things, because that is what I enjoy learning about the most. Your son, Rod.
A Mother's Words. Mrs. Eleanor Wimbish of Glen Burnie, Maryland, is the mother of William R. Stocks, who died in the Vietnam War. For years, she left letters to her son under his name on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. Dear Bill, today is February 13th, 1984. I came to this black wall again to see and touch your name. And as I do, I wonder if anyone ever stops to realize that next to your name on this black wall is your mother's heart. A heart broken 15 years ago today, when you lost your life in Vietnam. And as I look at your name, William R. Stocks, I think of how many, many times I used to wonder how scared and homesick you must have been in that strange country called Vietnam. And if and how it might have changed you. For you were the most happy-go-lucky kid in all the neighborhood. Hardly ever sad or unhappy. And until the day I die, I will see you as you laughed at me, even when I was very mad at you. And the next thing I knew, we were laughing together. But on this past New Year's Day, I had my answer. I talked by phone to a friend of yours from Michigan who spent your last Christmas and the last 4 months of your life with you. Jim told me how you died, for he was there and saw the helicopter crash. He told me how you had flown your quota and had not been scheduled to fly that day. How the regular pilot was unable to fly and had been replaced by someone with less experience. How they did not know the exact cause of the crash. He told me how, after a while over there, instead of a yellow streak, the men got a mean streak down their backs. Each day the streak got bigger and the men became meaner. Everyone but you, Bill. He said how you stayed the same happy-go-lucky guy that you were when you arrived in Vietnam. How your warmth and friendliness drew the guys to you. How your lieutenant gave you the nickname of Spanky, and soon your group, Jim included, were all known as Spanky's Gang. How when you died, it made it so much harder on them, for you were their moral support. And he said how you, of all people, should never have been the one to die. How it hurts to write this, but I must face it and then put it to rest. I know after Jim talked to me, he must have relived it all over again and suffered so. Before I hung up the phone, I told Jim I loved him. Loved him for just being your close friend and for being there with you when you died. How lucky you were to have him for a friend, and how lucky he was to have had you. They tell me the letters I write to you and leave here at this memorial are waking others up to the fact that there is still so much pain left after all these years from the Vietnam War. But this I know. I would rather have had you for 21 years and all the pain that goes with losing you than never to have had you at all. Mom.
Kids say the darndest things, observed television host and author Art Linkletter. Well, kids occasionally write the darndest things too, and sometimes they receive interesting responses, especially when the responses come from a country's leader. The most famous letter from a U.S. president to a child must be Abraham Lincoln's reply to 11-year-old Grace Bedell's note from October 14, 1860. In it, Grace writes to Abraham Lincoln, suggesting that he let his whiskers grow, adding, "You would look a great deal better for your face is so thin. All the ladies like whiskers, and they would tease their husbands to vote for you, and then you would be president." Lincoln replied right away, "As to the whiskers, having never worn any, do you not think people would call it a piece of silly affection if I were to begin it now? Well, the rest, as they say, is history. Lincoln grew the whiskers and became president." Another political leader with a beard even larger than Lincoln's also wrote to a president as a youngster. There is no indication, however, that President Franklin D. Roosevelt, addressed as "my good friend Roosevelt," ever answered the handwritten letter from a 12-year-old boy from Santiago, Cuba, on November 6, 1940, who wrote in part, "If you would like, give me a $10 bill, green American," in the letter, because never, I have not seen a $10 bill, green American, and I would like to have one of them. Would the world have turned out differently had Franklin D. Roosevelt sent young Fidel Castro a $10 bill? Colin Powell, America's first African American to be chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and Secretary of State, took the time to answer these questions from school children. Dear students, thank you for your letters and drawings. And most of all, thank you for your kind words and for your overwhelming support of our men and women in the armed forces. I counted 16 questions. So let me see if I can answer them for you. It is exciting and a great challenge to be President Bush's top military advisor. Number 2, I feel very fortunate to be the son of Jamaican Americans. My parents were two very wonderful people who imparted to me a set of values that I treasure. Number 3, I am married. My wife's name is Alma. I have 3 children. Michael, my son, is in law school at Georgetown University. Through Michael and his wife, I have a grandson, Jeffrey. My daughter, Linda, is an actress living in New York City. My daughter, Anne Marie, is a student at William and Mary College. Number 4, yes, I am very glad the war is over. Number 5, I enjoy being a general because I get to work with troops anywhere. It always raises my morale to meet with men and women of our armed forces. Number 6, I live in quarters number 6 at Fort Myer, Virginia. From my house, I can see the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, the Jefferson Memorial, and other Washington sites. Number 7, I was in Vietnam twice, once in 1962, 63, and again in 1968, 69. Number 8, my birthday is 5 April, and I am 50 years old. Number 9, I did not want the war with Iraq to start, but when Iraq invaded Kuwait, Mr. Saddam Hussein started the war. The United States gave him over 5 months to withdraw his army. When he did not withdraw, we made him withdraw. Number 10, I was awarded the Purple Heart when I was wounded by a booby trap in Vietnam. Number 11, I was appointed by President Bush to be the 12th chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and I took office on October 1st, 1989. Number 12, yes, this was the first time General Schwarzkopf and I worked directly together in a war, although both of us fought in Vietnam as well. Number 13, I don't have a favorite color or food. There are so many of both what I like. Number 14, my best hobby is rebuilding old cars. Number 15, yes, I think being a general is exciting, challenging, and it gives you an opportunity to work with some outstanding people. Number 16, yes, General Schwarzkopf is a superb gentleman. I've always enjoyed working with him. Now that I've answered your questions, let me ask a favor of each one of you. Study hard, do your homework, be kind to one another, and always remember that in America, your dreams can come true. Sincerely, Colin L. Powell, Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff.
The following are journal entries and a letter to his family by Army Corporal Jason Bogart of Seattle, Washington. They were found on his computer following his death during his second tour of Afghanistan, after having served a tour in Iraq as a part of the Washington National Guard. Journal entries: Afghanistan, 2007-2008. December 15th, 2007. I arrived at a little forward operating base called Bella. As I got off the bird, the first thing I noticed was that I was surrounded by high mountains. They put me in weapons squad as an assistant gunner. I have to carry 400 to 500 7.62 rounds, which weighs around 6 pounds every 100 rounds. That on top of all the other stuff I have to carry, it's not easy humping these mountains. I was put into an airborne unit, and me not having airborne school, I get a lot of shit for it. While we were at Bella, it was pretty bad. I lost my platoon sergeant, SFC Kaler, and was in around 10 to 15 firefights. The firefights weren't that bad, but losing SFC Kaler was very hard on me and the other guys that have known him longer. He was shot in the head by supposedly allies that were manning one of the observation posts. A patrol went out early in the morning, set up overlooking a village in an attempt to catch AAF, anti-American forces. He said to the men that were with him, "I never liked this. You guys find cover, and I'll go up to get their attention." He walked up stating loudly, "We are Americans." From where he was standing, he was silhouetted against a roof with snow on it, and American soldiers have a very distinctive silhouette with our Kevlar helmet and the gear we wear. But was still shot in the head by Mohammed Din, a name and face that will forever be with me. If I ever see him, I will do everything in my power to kill him, even if it takes mine. The men that killed him dropped their weapons and ran after Mohammed Din shot him. It was planned, and they all knew exactly what they were doing. We arrived at Blessing June 21st, 2008. We took indirect fires 2 days in a row. It's just a matter of time that guy slips up and is killed. I just pray that no friendlies are hit before we kill him. Patrols have been slowing down, but on our platoon is going to Wanat. It's a little village in between where I am now and where I was for the first 6 months. The last 3 patrols that have gone out there have either been hit with small arms and RPGs or had locals tell us that there were Taliban in the area. There was also ICON chat from Taliban that they have built up fighting positions and are just waiting for us. I think that we will see some pretty heavy fighting while we are out there. To my family, I feel my days are numbered, so I want to say all this while I still can. I pray to God no one will ever have to read this, but as death is all around me, it falls upon me. You will understand my recent feelings on this madness we call life. My views and outlook on life seems to be drastically changing recently. As many of you saw before I left when I quit drinking, I'm just starting to live my life. Never have I felt as strong as I do about what I'm doing. Here in Afghanistan, it is the right thing to be doing, is understood and accepted by God. As a result of that, death is much easier to accept. Coming back over here again seemed more appealing than being in America, surrounded by Americans that are more concerned about their next new car, new house, celebrity, etc., than the threat to the way of life of the West that is so prevalent in the places I've grown to accept as daily life. I hope one day there will be more Americans knowledgeable on the situation with terrorism in Afghanistan and how important it is that it's destroyed. Being back here in Afghanistan is exactly where I am supposed to be and where I wanted to be. I feel I'm doing more good over here than I was an electrician. I knew exactly what I was doing when I re-enlisted infantry. I'm just sorry that you all have to suffer for it now. For me, to prepare myself to take life without hesitation has been a very difficult thing to do. To take away another woman's son, husband, man's son, brother, has always bothered me, but through my eyes is understood by my God, and I am forgiven. For the man that took my life, more than likely, for all he has known his whole life, he feels the exact same way I do when he killed me. That is what scares me. And I don't think is understood by disappointingly a huge percentage of Americans. I've always used the analogy, if you're told the color blue is green your whole life and someone tells you it's actually blue, they can give you all the facts in the world to prove it's blue, but at the end of the day, it's still green to you. The enemy we're faced with is most of the time beyond words, and it comes down to a sad but inevitable conclusion. We have to have young men that are willing to die and act on them and kill them before they can carry out any plans. They have to kill innocent people because it's what they believe Allah wants from distorted teachings of the Quran. Know that you are all the reason I am here, and to give my life for that is nothing to me. My love for every one of you is what drives me and brings me comfort under stressful situations. Carice, let your child know of me, and that even though I was never able to see he or she grow, I love them more than you could imagine. Corporal Bogar was killed in a firefight at Wanat, Afghanistan on July 13th, 2008. He was 25.